Um, I have to repeat what I said last night. That was my first reading was last night, and I looked around the crowd, and I felt like I was at my wake. Except my eyes were open, and I got to see all of you, and you know how much the Irish like wakes, and so there's two members of my high school class here, Michael Skian, who I haven't seen since 1973, and see, I still call her Kathy Wattis, but it's Kathy, and Mary Huff, who I've known since, I don't know, I was 8 years old. Nancy Stefanik, Mr. Really, thank you very much for coming. This means a great deal to me, and geez, I want to recognize John D. Graham, one of the great singer-songwriters of the country. And I'm sorry, I'll go around the room, but it's just the Garveys, who should be sitting closer, my new friend. But I'd like to thank Hope. I'd like to thank Sandy for inviting me here tonight. And this is a beautiful space to hopefully read. And I don't interrupt anybody by saying have too many ums and ahs. So, how would I say this? I guess the very first thing I ever fell in love with was baseball. And I fell in love all by myself, I went to Catholic school, and, they taught me to love Jesus and other things too. But baseball was the thing that I fell in love all by myself. And I'm 60 years old now, and I daydream and think about baseball every single day. I don't care if the snow's on the ground or the grass is green or the sky is gray, or I think about it. The other sports have kind of fallen away for me. I have no idea why, but baseball is something that always captures my imagination, and I'd turn into a puddle, let's say, if I saw a kid go by with a baseball glove on the handlebar of his or her bike. That's the kind of thing. It just snaps me to attention. And it was the first language I was fluent in, was baseball. And, I know Jimmy talked it back to me, spoke my language. And it was there when I couldn't speak up in class, or I couldn't talk to girls, but I could talk baseball. And even now, all these years later, whether I'm talking about man and God and law and music, the subject always tends to return to baseball. I didn't want to grow up to be a writer. I wanted to grow up to be the first American pope. I always know it's a Catholic audience when I've spoken to Protestant audiences, and they just don't think that's very funny. Or they don't really understand why I'm saying that. But I wanted to grow up to be the first American pope. I had a name picked out and everything. That's how planned I was. Pope Patrick the First. Yeah. What else would a kid from Hungary name himself? But I had another great career plan. The other plan was I wanted to replace Mickey Mantle as the center fielder of the Yankees. But then Sister Patricia Feely allowed me to take her journalism class at Cathedral, and Jim Fox invited me to the old Springfield Daily News, and Paul Donahue, who let me stay at the Daily News, I dedicated the book to them because they changed my life, like that. And I wish there were many people here today. Tom and Patty Carney, Mackie Garvey, Dan O'Shea, immigrants who nurtured love of baseball in me. Mary's uncle, Bob Huff, lived next door, and all I did was throw a ball off the garage wall. I'm sure I woke your uncle up many, many times. How many hours there? Huh? then Nancy's father, Peter from Westfield, with Romeo Sear. I don't know if people remember Romeo, but Romeo was just a great man. And Peter was Romeo's right hand, so he's here tonight. Pete Hamill, the great writer, once wrote that that's how so many immigrants became Americans, through baseball. And I think it's true. My late father, who was as Irish you could get, and very few things about America dented him. He did like Mr. Ed, the Talking Horse, and The Sopranos. But he was always complaining about Yaz and telling me to eat my potatoes because Mickey Mantle did. I never really ate my potatoes. The only Irish guy you'll meet that. What I wouldn't give to have my great friend Kevin O'Hare here any night, More than anybody, I'd love to read his review of this book. And that's what baseball kind of does, is it's about memory and childhood and tomorrow. There's always tomorrow. I know the Red Sox lost today, so there's always tomorrow. Thank you. And I can't complete like these opening statements without saying the name, Suzanne Strempek Shae, my lovely wife. She's the reason why I don't play the lottery, because I feel like I've already won at life's game, her loving me back. Suzanne has many great characteristics and talents, and a lot of you know what they are, but I'm going to share one you don't know. Suzanne really isn't into baseball. But she's always happy when the Yankees win, because when the Yankees win, it makes me happy, and she's happy when I'm happy. Now, I'm a new author, and I realize I'm just going to follow a great tradition in putting on my writer's cap. So, I am a Yankee fan, and even nuns couldn't believe that when I was a kid. But you are what you are. To quote John Prine, you are what you are and you ain't what you ain't. And I'm a Yankee fan. But once upon a time, I had a job covering the Red Sox. And from 1980 to 1985, I covered the Red Sox, which is a great job for a Yankee fan. Because if the Red Sox won, they were in a good mood and they would talk to me or talk to the press. If they lost, well, that's always a good day in my neighborhood. But in doing this book in the 101 Dingers, which was my co-author, or the co-author is Josh Schifrin, and I don't know if any of you knew Dr. David Schifrin. Did he deliver any of your babies? No? He was at Bay State for a long time. And his son Josh, I've never met him, and this is how remarkable it is in the 21st century. Your co-author, I'd recognize his voice, but a mutual friend connected us, and Josh wrote about 25 of these home runs, and he needed someone to finish it. And so I said yes, because getting paid to write about baseball is really should be against the law or something like that, because it's just so nice. And the only thing we disagreed with is that I wanted to move Bernie Carbo's home run up higher than most people, because I really believe like we wouldn't be talking about Carlton Fisk if it wasn't for Bernie Carbo's home run. But a lot of these home runs are ones that you would know about, even if you're not a baseball fan, that you would, you just know. Let's say when Hank Aaron broke Babe Ruth's record, or Bill Mazeroski beat the Yankee. You know, some of these things are like, and Carlton Fisk's home run. And I was really happy, I guess, to include a couple that, you know, have kind of gotten lost to history. And if you don't mind, I'd read you one about Tony Conigliaro. How many people remember Tony Conigliaro? All right, thank you. Is Tony Conigliaro, how many here have never heard of Tony Conigliaro? Well, Tony Conigliaro, I'll just give a short, he was, and maybe it'll say this in this, but he was a Red Sox right fielder, and he was like a combination of, I don't know, you know, like Joe Namath and a movie star. And by the mid-'60s, or by 1967, you know, he was ahead of every pace to break Babe Ruth's record. And he was local. He was from Swampscott. And one night, got hit by a pitch. And let me read. Boston Red Sox shortstop Rico Petrocelli was kneeling on deck that sweltering Friday night in the summer of 1967. Fenway Park was almost full, 31,027 in attendance. New England was starting to believe in its team. On opening day, only 8,324 had attended. While Kari Yastrzemski was in the midst of a season that would be historic, the fan favorite was right fielder Tony Conigliaro, a local guy. He had gone to St. Mary's High in Lynn, a city a few miles up the road from Boston. He had black hair and dark eyes, long and lanky. He moved with a movie star swagger. The Red Sox had needed some of that. The team hadn't won a pennant since 1946 and really hadn't been in contention since 1949. The first pitch Tony C. saw at Fenway Park on opening day of 1964 was from Chicago White Sox right-hander Joel Horwin, which he powered high and far over the green monster and left. Tony C. was 3 months past his 19th birthday. He finished his rookie season with 24 home runs, the most by a teenager in baseball history. In 1965, Tony C. led the American League with 32 dingers. On July 23, 1967, 2 weeks after he made his first All-Star game, he became the youngest player in the American League to record his 100th homer. Tony C. was 22 and 6 months old. The only person to reach that plateau faster was New York Giants Hall of Famer Mel Ott, who hit his 100th in 1931 at 22 years and 4 months. Ott finished with 511 homers. We love that kind of stuff, baseball fans. It matters if you're 22 and 6 months. Conigliaro seemed on the same path to baseball immortality. Cleveland Indians manager and former big league catcher Bertie Tebbetts was convinced Tony C., with his power and the friendly confines of Fenway, was going to break the single-season home run record of 61 set by New York Yankee outfielder Roger Maris. Boston Hall of Famer Ted Williams, who hit 521 homers in his lengthy career, once told Conigliaro, "Don't change that solid stance of yours, no matter what you're told." Tony C. crowded the plate. Pitchers used to say that only Frank Robinson, a Hall of Famer with 586 homers, stood closer. It was a form of intimidation. Back then, inching closer to the plate was all about the battle of who controlled the inside part of the plate. Standing close and also helped hitters with their plate coverage. Johnny Pesky, Tony C.'s first big league manager, told Tony's biographer, Dave Canantano, that he was fearless of the ball. He would just move his head like Williams did. He thought the ball would never hit him, but it always seemed to find him. A pitch broke his wrist on his second month in the big leagues. His arm was broken by a pitch in July of 1964. He was out a month, which probably cost him the Rookie of the Year honors. Within 14 months of his debut, he had suffered 2 broken wrists and a broken left arm. He still crowded the plate. According to Sabermetrics, the study of baseball statistics, the players Tony C. most resembled at the same age were New York's Mickey Mantle and Cincinnati's Frank Robinson, both first ballot Hall of Famers. On August 18, 1967, Conigliaro was batting sixth for the Red Sox. He had 20 homers, 67 RBIs, and a .287 average. He was also in a bit of a slump. The previous day, Ed Kenny, Tony C's partner in the music business, Tony C, had a regional hit in 1965, had been at the Ted Williams baseball camp in Lakeville, Massachusetts, watching his sons play. Williams gave him a message for the Red Sox right fielder. Tell Tony that he's crowding the plate. Tell him to back off. It's getting too serious now with the Red Sox. Tony C told his brother Billy, that's a Red Sox prospect, that if he backed off the plate, pitchers wouldn't take him seriously. That Friday night, in his first at-bat, as usual, Tony crowded the plate and then singled. In the fourth, George Scott. I love hearing all these old names, actually. You know what I mean? We all had their baseball cards. In the fourth, George Scott tried to stretch a single into a double and was thrown out. The game was delayed for 10 minutes after a fan threw a smoke bomb into left field. When it resumed, center fielder Reggie Smith flied out to center. Tony C dug in. Years later, Petrocelli would say of his buddy with whom he practiced doo-wop singing on the road, I always believed there was a spot where Tony couldn't see the inside pitch. If he threw it to the right spot, he'd hit that ball 9 miles. But then there was this blind spot, a little more inside. Sometimes he moved too late to get out of the way, and sometimes he never moved at all. Petrocelli later told the Boston Globe sports writer Bob Ryan that when California Angels pitcher Jack Hamilton's fastball hit Tony C's head, it was a squish, like a tomato or a melon hitting the ground. Ryan, then a Boston College student, was in the stands. He would write on the 47th anniversary of Tony C being hit in the head, I remember the hush, the sound of silence from 31,027 people is an eerie sensation. There was no hubbub, no low buzzing as Tony lay on the ground. He wasn't popping up and running to first base. That was obvious. It was also obvious something very bad had just taken place. California catcher Bob Rogers and home plate umpire Bill Valentine were first on the scene. Petrocelli was next, arriving in a sprint. I didn't like what I saw, he recalled. Tony's face was swelling up like there was somebody inside his skull blowing up a balloon. The first thing I thought was he's going to lose his left eye. Blood was pouring out of his nose. Tony C regained consciousness in the Red Sox clubhouse. It hurts like hell, he told the doctor. I heard a hissing sound, and that was all. He thought he was dying. A doctor would later say that if the ball had hit Conigliaro an inch higher and to the right, he indeed would have died in the batter's box. The official diagnosis was a linear fracture of the left cheekbone, a dislocated jaw, and a cracked orbital bone encasing his left eye. There was also severe damage to the retina of his left eye. The Red Sox said he'd be back in 3 weeks. He wasn't. Tony C missed the rest of the season. The Red Sox went on to win their first pennant since 1946, but lost to the St. Louis Cardinals in the World Series in 7 games. The impossible dream season was scarred. Tony C would miss all of 1968 too. His eyesight in his left eye was 2300. But he stayed in baseball shape. He tried pitching, something he'd done in high school. In one instructional league game, he gave up 15 runs in an inning. He also kept taking batting practice and would shag fly balls when he wasn't pitching. His eyesight improved, slowly but surely. Tony C not only made the Red Sox in 1969, he was the opening day lineup against the Orioles in Baltimore, batting fifth, playing right field. He received a long ovation from the crowd in Baltimore. He struck out in his first at-bat. In the 10th inning, Tony C drove a ball over everything for a 2-run homer off lefty Pete Richards. And when he returned to the bench, manager and notorious toughie Dick Williams kissed him. The comeback kid had come all the way back. But the story continued. In the 12th, Tony C scored the winning run. He finished the year with 20 homers, 82 RBIs. He also played in 141 games and was named the American League Comeback Player of the Year. In 1970, he stroked 36 homers and drove in a career-high 116 RBIs. But the Red Sox traded him to the California Angels. Red Sox fans were shocked. In California, Conigliaro's eyesight deteriorated. He admitted he couldn't pick up the spin of the ball. He retired in 1971 at the age of 26. Tony C. made a comeback with the Red Sox in 1975. When he singled on opening day, he received a 3-minute standing ovation from the Fenway faithful. He had 2 homers in that pennant-winning season, both off former Cy Young Award winners Baltimore's Mike Cuellar and Oakland's Vida Blue. He retired for good after a stint at Pawtucket in AAA International League. He was 30, with a career total of 166 home runs. He suffered a massive stroke in 1982 and lived in a vegetative state for 8 years. Tony C. was 45 when he died on February 24th, 1990. The end of that one. Now, how many people think his number should be up in the right field pavilion, Fenway Park? Why do you think the Red Sox don't do that? I'm sorry?
There's not any there.
No, and it's the kind of thing that I don't know about how, I'm a Yankee fan, but anytime I see someone, he wore number 25, and anytime that I see somebody go out in the field wearing number 25 for the Red Sox, it always looks like an imposter. You know what I mean? That it just seems like he was the guy, and so like why that was included, I included it, I guess, is the day that he hit that home run. You know, I was like 14. And my glove was broken, and I went to there was a shoemaker down the street, and he would fix baseball gloves, and you know, I probably whined about Tony Conigliaro or the Red Sox winning, and he said, he's a human being, you know, and I had never really thought of baseball players at that, and the kind of, you know, long road to come back, the long road he took to come back, and I don't know, I included that one in there. And in this season of Jackie Robinson Remembrance, that was the other one that I think might be unique to this book, is that most baseball fans, or all baseball fans, realize in 1951, before I was born, that the Brooklyn Dodgers had you know, collapsed or blew like a gigantic lead against the New York baseball Giants. And, you know, like a lot of things in history, we know the first couple of paragraphs. But, you know, like in researching this, is that what happened was that on the very last day of the season, the Giants clinched first place. And the Dodgers had to win to clinch a place in the playoffs, and Jackie Robinson hit, you know, a dramatic home run that kept them alive. And he wasn't known as a home run hitter. How many watched the Ken Burns series that was just on? Anybody here? Yeah, I haven't gotten to it, but if you don't mind, I'll read Jackie Robinson. And Jackie Robinson, as someone told me last night, used to ski at Mount Tom. I have no idea what his local connection was, but that they saw him with his children many times up there. How do you like my hat? No? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was working. Whoa. You want to see my arm? No, I had a good arm, actually. Rubber arm. I wasn't a wrestler, though. Oh, sorry about that. I know I need a haircut. That's one of the reasons I'm wearing the hat, too. Yeah. The mere mention of Jackie Robinson embraces so much history, so much that bears his imprint. If he's not the most important person in baseball history, he's second only to Babe Ruth, who also changed everything. Thanks to Ryan. Thank you. It's on? Oh, very good. Brooklyn Dodgers president and general manager Branch Rickey decided in 1945 that Robinson would be the man to break the color line. He'd been looking for someone to be that pioneer, and in the summer of 1945 sent his chief scout and right-hand man, Clyde Sukfor, to scout the Negro Leagues. He saw Robinson playing shortstop for the Kansas City Monarchs. Robinson wasn't that young for a baseball player in 1945. Suckworth told the 26-year-old that the Dodgers were thinking about placing a Negro League team in Brooklyn. He didn't say anything about the actual Dodgers. Robinson wasn't the best player in the Negro Leagues at the time. A long line had stretched in front of him, including Larry Doby and Monty Irvin, but Rickey wanted more than a ball player. He was impressed by Robinson's education, UCLA, where he lettered in baseball, basketball, football, and track, and by someone who had grown up and competed in a racially mixed atmosphere. Rickey also liked the fact Robinson was a lieutenant in the U.S. Army, and he wasn't a smoker, drinker, or womanizer. Robinson, like Rickey, was also a Methodist, and Rickey took his religion seriously. Andy McHugh wrote about Rickey's playing career for the Society of American Baseball Research. His piece included this line: "He spent parts of the next 3 seasons in the majors earning a reputation as a marginal catcher, a poor hitter, and an odd duck for refusing to play baseball on Sundays." Rickey signed Robinson on October 23, 1945. After a year of playing for the AAA Montreal Royals in 1946, Robinson became a Brooklyn Dodger in 1947 and changed baseball with every at-bat. Signed as a shortstop, Robinson was converted to first base and then to second base. He was the National League's MVP in 1949, winning the batting championship and stealing more bases than anyone in the National League in 19 years. He finished second in runs batted in with 124 and in hits with 203. He finished third in doubles and triples. The Dodgers won the National League pennant on the final day of the 49th season. Robinson was just as good in 1950 and 51, but the Dodgers lost pennants both years on the last day of the season. The Dodgers were like the Red Sox before the Red Sox were the Red Sox. And those of you, old enough, remember that. They were the bums. On August 11, 1951, the Dodgers were 70-35 and owned a 13.5 game lead over the New York Giants. The Dodgers played just above 500 ball the rest of the way, going 26-23, but were caught by the Giants. Behind pitchers Sal Magley and Larry Jansen, third baseman Bobby Thompson, future Hall of Fame outfielders Monty Irvin and Willie Mays, the Giants streaked to a 37-7 record down the stretch. At one point in their hot streak, the Giants won 16 straight games. Leo Durocher, the former skipper of the Dodgers, was managing the Giants. Rumors that the Giants had a system for stealing signs in 1951 became public 50 years later when an article in the Wall Street Journal revealed that coach Herman Franks used a telescope to eye pitch signs from the catcher. The coming pitch was relayed to the Giants' dugout via a buzzer. But that wasn't known outside the Giants organization in 1951. On the last day of the regular season, the Giants beat the Braves in Boston to take over first place for the first time in that season. Meanwhile, in Philadelphia, the Dodgers trailed the Phillies 8-5 before nodding the score in the 8th. In the 12th, Brooklyn ace Don Newcomb was trying to work out of a bases-loaded 2-out jam. It was getting dark. Philadelphia's Eddie Walker sliced a low liner that was destined to land in right field. The ball is a blur passing second base, difficult to follow in the half light, impossible to catch. Red Smith wrote in the New York Herald Tribune. Jackie Robinson catches it. He flings himself headlong at right angles to the flight of the ball. For an instant, his body is suspended in midair. Then somehow the outstretched glove intercepts the ball inches off the ground. I like that description, actually. That's good. The fall, according to a book on Robinson, jammed Jackie's left elbow into the solar plexus so hard he was knocked out. In the stands, word spread that a heart attack had felled him. In the next day's New York Times, Roscoe McGowan reported that Robinson's catch was one of the greatest, if not the greatest, clutch play I've seen in almost in a lifetime of watching Major League Baseball. In his column, Red Smith wrote, Robinson stretched at full length in the insubstantial twilight, the unconquerable doing the impossible. Robinson had saved the season. The Dodgers were still breathing. In the 14th, against Hall of Famer Robin Roberts, Robinson, batting cleanup in a lineup that included Duke Snider, Roy Campanella, and Gil Hodges, walloped the towering home run into the fading light at Shae Park. The Dodgers won 9-8. There's no stopping us now, Robinson said after the game. The breaks haven't been going our way during the past month, but now that we've gotten this far, we're not looking back. The Dodgers and the Giants are scheduled to play a 3-game series to determine the National League champions. The Giants won Game 1 at Ebbets Field in Brooklyn behind the homers from Bobby Thompson and Monty Irvin off Brooklyn starter Ralph Branca. The Dodgers overpowered the Giants at the Polo Grounds in Game 2. Robinson contributed a homer and knocked in 3 runs. In Game 3, Bobby Thompson hit his famous home run, the shot heard round the world, in the bottom of the ninth, and the Giants won the pennant. The Giants won the pennant. The Giants won the pennant for the first time since 1937. While the Giants celebrated, the Dodgers mourned, and the baseball world marveled at the comeback in the first nationally televised game. Robinson made sure Thompson touched every base. Robinson was one of the few Dodgers to duck into the Giants clubhouse after and to offer congratulations. Ralph Branca, the losing pitcher, said Robinson was the only teammate who went out of his way to console him. As always, Jackie Robinson was one of a kind. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Last night they had a lot of questions. Mostly disagreeing with me, but because the thing about this book is, let's say, I'm not I know a lot about baseball, but I'm certainly no expert. I'm just a fan, and so sometimes someone says, well, the person that the book picked for 94th should be really 96th. I mean, it's all a matter of opinion, and what I hope is that the book brings back, summer memories, good and bad, that it reminds you of, oh yeah, I forgot that detail. And when I started my portion of the book, there were things that I knew very well. And then there were things that I once knew, but had forgotten because, life had gone on, and then there were the things that I didn't know at all. And it was neat digging into that kind of loam. Like, I'll ask some, who hit the first World Series home run in Yankee Stadium? Well, I didn't know either. I had to look it up. But it was Casey Stengel, who was, the manager of the Yankees, the Mets, and he was kind of a famous kind of character. And his the first World Series home run, Yankee Stadium was always famous for having games in October. And Casey hit an inside the park home run while one of his cleats was falling off. And he was exhorting himself, run, Casey, run. But he was trying to keep his spike on. You know what I mean? And like, those are like some of the things that, enchanted me last winter when it was snowing. And I'm usually not enchanted by that much snow. But it were those little kind of details that, I hope you find a bunch of them in this book. I'll read you one last piece on what turned me, my favorite home run. Oh, I had a book, here. is like anyone, it all starts somewhere, doesn't it? You know, with I don't know. What turned you into baseball fan, David?
I used to go to Candlestick Park in California once in San Francisco. Now San Francisco guys play. And watch Willie McCovey, Willie Mays, and those guys. And that was my first. I have two teams: National League and American League. American, obviously, Red Sox.
It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be obvious.
When you're a kid.
I can try to talk you out of this. You know, I've never talked anybody out of it, but that doesn't stop me from trying.
I guess you're a minority where you were.
Oh, I was. But as you know, Springfield had a Giants farm team that, you know, some of those people that I mentioned before,
Right.
you'd stand in the parking lot and try to catch foul ball, you know, from batting practice. You'd stand there with your glove and, you know, but good for you that you got to see the Giants.
For my dad.
Yeah, no, thanks for your dad. No, that's.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people were the first, whether it's Fenway or any park, you know, wherever you live, you know, when you're a kid, I think that kind of exposure. And, you know, playing Little League, you probably played Little League.
Oh, yeah. I played way past Little League. Well, you know, the irony is I actually played in one of those over 30 leagues.
Yeah.
And I was old. I was like 45, right? Something like that. And I was drafted by the Red Sox. No lie. So every Sunday I had to wear a Red Sox uniform. And it was very itchy. You know what I mean? And after the games, you know, you'd go somewhere to get a Coca-Cola. I'd get a Coca-Cola. Come home from the game, and, you know, I had the black eye patch thing, you know, I'd be sweaty. And, you know, I was wearing a Red Sox uniform. And, like, little kids would look at me, like in 7-Elevens and Dairy Marts all over Western Mass, thinking, hey, there's a Red Sox in the neighborhood, you know. But, and of course, one year we won the league championship, but then lost in the playoffs. But that's another story for another time. But, and
Did you hit a home run?
I never came close. Well, the one time I ever came close, I even in my imagination, I never could hit a home run. But in this old man league, there was a guy who was the best player in the league. His name is Andy Ayers, and I still remember that. He lives in Northampton. And in this league, you could only pitch for 6 innings because they just didn't want, you know, some person dominating. So you had to. So Andy Ayers was the catcher, and he was great. And then in the 7th inning, he'd come in to pitch. Well, in one of the years, geez, you know, like if you practice, you know, I started to hit a little bit, you know, pretty good, you know, this and that. So I get up to the bat. I'm not thinking home run at all, but I go, throws me a fastball. Now, I don't know if it's best fastball, but he threw a fastball. I hit it home run distance. Just foul. Just foul. Really. I stood at the plate and like kind of admired it. No, I didn't do that at all. I just couldn't believe I hit Andy Ayers, you know what I mean, that I even got the bat on the ball. Well, anyway, so you know, I get out and I get back in and I think, I can hit a home run. So I get back in and he had thrown a hard pitch that as I get there. He throws the slowest curveball. I swung and I stumbled and I nearly fell on my face. And that's baseball. Is that he goes, if this little guy, this little shrimp can hit, well, I'm going to throw him something. You know, I didn't think that at all. So that was I had a fall ball home run. Went out and measured it and everything. No, I didn't do that. But well, in the back of the book, and I had nothing. Oh, it's not here. I'll take this one. I really became. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. I keep forgetting that I might. I said, what's this? In the back of the book, and I had nothing to do with this, but I was delighted. It goes, someone once asked me if I ever went up to the plate trying to hit a home run. I said, sure, every time. Mickey Mantle.
Yeah.
And I go, And I go, yeah. Well, anyways, I was 9 years old in 1964, and it was really the first year that I really followed baseball. I mean, I knew 63, 62, 60, but this is where, those ancient stories about being under the covers with the transistor radio, and every win made me taller, every loss. Well, anyways, in 1964, I would watch the World Series with my cousin Davey Scagliarini, Shae on his mother's side, and his sister had her room across the hallway, and she was listening to the Beatles. So, and I'm, and so I'd watch Davey, and Mickey Mantle hit this. It was his favorite home run, and all these years later, it's still my favorite home run. So if I don't, and this is what kind of hooked me forever. Well, then I should add is the Yankees lost the World Series in 1964. David Halberstam wrote a big book on it, terrific book. And I came home and I was crying. I was 9. And my next door neighbor, Bud Moriarty, who was on the other side of me than Bob Huff, and he goes, "Why are you crying?" And I go, "The Yankees lost the World Series." He goes, "Don't worry about it. They win every year." Well, the next year they finished 6th. Following year they finished last. 1967, they finished 9th. I was a grown man before they won again, and I would be a different person, I believe, if they had succeeded. So my things are, I don't know if you've ever heard of Horace Clarke or Roger Repose. Those are my childhood people. But anyways, here's a story about Mickey Mantle. Mickey Mantle was a lot of things, but there was one thing he wasn't: a braggart. Standing in the on-deck circle with Elston Howard watching right-handed knuckleball specialist Barney Schultz finish his warm-up pitches on October 10th, 1964, Mantle turned to a teammate and said, "You can go back to the clubhouse, Elston. This game is over." In the dugout, getting a drink of water after pitching 9 terrific innings, Yankee starter Jim Bouton saw Mantle holding his bat. He was standing there with his bat on his shoulder, watching Barney Schultz. His warm-up pitches were coming in about thigh-high and breaking down to the shins, to the ankles, 2 or 3 in a row. Mickey said, "I'm going to hit one out of here." It wasn't a big announcement. He wasn't like that. He wasn't a grandstander. He might have been saying it to himself. He understood that Barney Schultz was the wrong guy for them to bring in. The New York Yankees and St. Louis Cardinals had split the first 2 games of the World Series and were tied 1-1 in the bottom of the 9th. A Mantle error in right field led to the only Cardinal run. It really bothered him. By that time, I couldn't run too much anymore, he told author Jane Levy in her biography of Sandy Koufax and Mantle in 1983. They put me in right field and Roger in center. Somebody hit me a ground ball. I nonchalanted it. It went through my legs, and the guy scored. St. Louis hurler Curt Simmons matched Bouton's pitch for pitch. In his 8 innings, Simmons, a crafty left-hander who had missed pitching in the World Series for the 1950s Philadelphia Phillies whiz kids because of military obligations, had the Yankees hitting the ball into the ground, forcing 17 ground ball outs. See, now that interests me. I have no, that 17 ground ball outs. Bouton, a fireballer right-hander, who would become more famous 6 years later for writing the candid book Ball 4, stranded the go-ahead runner 4 times. He held the top 5 Cardinal hitters, Curt Flood, Lou Brock, Bill White, Ken Boyer, and Dick Groat, to 2 hits. Barney Schultz was a big reason why the Cardinals won the National League pennant. The 38-year-old journeyman had saved 14 games down the stretch, pitching 30 of the final 60 regular season games, helping the Cardinals overtake the collapsing Philadelphia Phillies, who led with a 6.5 game lead with 12 to play to wither away. Schultz, who owned a 1.64 ERA, had given up 1 homer all season. He was pitching in his first World Series, hearing the save in Game 1. The Yankees had been in 3rd place in the American League on August 22nd and looking old. Rookie pitcher Mel Stottlemyre, who won 9 games and only 12 starts that season, was a huge help. So was the September 5th acquisition from Cleveland of Pedro Ramos, who saved 8 games. Catcher Elston Howard hit nearly 400 in the final few weeks of the season. Maris was a key late-stage force at the plate in the field. 23-year-old first baseman Joe Pepitone came alive offensively, hitting 12 homers and knocking in 30 in the heat of a pennant race. Mantle slugged 7 homers in September as the Yankees won 27 of their final 35 games, capturing the American League title by 1 game, their 14th pennant in 16 years. Boy, to be alive then, when they would win that. No, I'm not okay. Mantle was about to turn 33. He had also his last great season in 1964. 33 homers, 111 RBI, 303 batting average, and an OPS of 1,015. In the 9th inning of Game 3 of the World Series, the game's greatest switch hitter stepped into the left-handed batter's box, number 7 on his back. The crowd of 67,000 at Yankee Stadium stood with expectation. While Mantle had hit 364 for the 10th time and had homered more than 30 times for the 9th season of a career that began in 1951, his batting average from the left side was only .241 that season. The Cardinals knew this. Tim McCarver, the Cardinals' 22-year-old catcher, later told Arthur Levy that he also knew Mantle, with knees and shoulder woes, was struggling. A shell of the player that he once was. I could even hear him groaning on some swings. A swing and a miss were real bad. In the first pitch from Schultz, McCarver said it was a knuckler that dangled like bait to a big fish. Plus, it lingered into that area that was down, and Mickey was a lethal low ball hitter. The pitch was so low that it allowed him to turn on it and pull it. Mantle hit it so high and far that Boughton thought it was going to be the first home run slugged out of Yankee Stadium. It wasn't, although it landed deep in the third deck. With his 16th World Series home run, Mantle surpassed Babe Ruth as the all-time leader. At the time, Mantle was only the 5th to hit a walk-off home run. The others were Tommy Henrich of the 49 Yankees, Dusty Rhodes of the 1954 New York Giants, Eddie Matthews of the 1957 Milwaukee Braves, and Bill Mazeroski of the 1960 Pittsburgh Pirates in World Series history to do that. As usual, Mantle circled the bases with his head down. After he had crossed home plate and was drenched by champagne in the clubhouse, he was asked by reporters how many other times he had called a homer in his career. I called him about 500 times, Mantle said with a laugh. That was the only time I did it, though. Usually I struck out. His first walk-off homer came against the Red Sox in 1953. He would hit 13 in his career, 12 in the regular season. His last coming off Detroit's Fred Gladding on June 24, 1967 at Yankee Stadium. Mantle will later say the homer off Schultz was the highlight of his career, one that would include 536 homers. Mantle would hit his 17th homer in Game 6 off Simmons, a Yankee win, and give the Yanks a chance in with his 18th in Game 7 off Bob Gibson. But the Cardinals, his favorite team as a kid growing up in Commerce, Oklahoma, won the World Series. It was the first time the Yankees had lost back-to-back World Series since 1921-1922, when they bowed to the New York Giants. In his final World Series, Mantle hit .333. Only Yogi Berra would play in more fall classics. Mantle played in 12 and hit more homers and drove in more runs than anyone in baseball history. My hero. Until Bob Dylan became my hero. Any questions? I appreciate you listening.
Did you have to go to Cooperstown for some reason?
No, as you know, like in the one, Suzanne and I own a lot of books.
Yeah.
And so I read a lot of books, and I watched, and sometimes, I'll watch that. Thanks to YouTube, I can watch that Mickey Mantle home run, and it's, and you can watch a lot of this stuff now. So I didn't have to go to Cooperstown, but That's a good suggestion for a Sunday
Well, I
drive.
know they have online now too.
Oh yeah, yeah. You know, it's a remarkable. It's really remarkable. Actually, there was a man last night, and he says to me, "Who did Hank Aaron hit his first home run off of?" And it was his first cousin, Vic Raschi, who was the Springfield Rifle. Yeah, you know, and you go, that's how small sometimes or compressed the baseball world is that, and I actually saw that at Cooperstown one time, is that they listed all the pitchers that Hank Aaron had hit his home runs, and I saw Vic Raschi. And Vic was a great Yankee pitcher who ended up in the National League, St. Louis Cardinals, and but that's how. Have you been to Cooperstown?
I have, yeah.
Yeah.
But not to the library.
No, the library is
Certain
something.
hours.
Yeah. How many people have been here been to Cooperstown? Oh, you guys are good. That's good.
Tommy, I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, and we had the Kansas City Blues,
Yes?
which was a Yankee farm
Yes?
team. So when I was a little bitty kid, I mean, from the time I was 2 or 3 years old, we used, back when you could afford to go to a game,
Yes?
and my whole family, we'd go out to the games, and I saw DiMaggio's and, you know, all of it.
You weren't there in 1951, were you?
1951.
See, because the Yankees had sent Mantle down, and he went to the the Kansas City Blues, and his father famously showed up and, you know, challenged him. You know, said, "Are you a quitter?" And it was actually in Kansas City that he made his way back to New York. It's a great baseball town, Kansas City.
Yeah.
Great baseball town. Now, you never went to see the Kansas City Monarchs, did you?
No.
That was the.
Are you kidding? In the segregated.
Yeah. No. That's like someone asked me last night. Was there somebody that I should have had in the book? And one of them was this fellow named Josh Gibson, who was like the Babe Ruth of the Negro Leagues, and he reportedly like hit a ball out of Yankee Stadium, and then he hit another one that, well, I don't know, like what, 600 and something feet, but you know, at the time no one was really counting, and I thought, you know, I knew a little bit about Josh Gibson, and if you saw the Ken Burns, the original one, there was one of the talking heads was a guy named Buck O'Neill, and Buck O'Neill said the only time he heard a sound like Josh Gibson hit a ball was Babe Ruth and Ted Williams, I think. You know what I mean? That's how amazing Josh Gibson was. But thank you, Kansas City Blues. I could use a hat like that. I wouldn't get boos and hisses if I wore a Kansas City Blues hat. Any other questions?
Because of this day and age, I have to ask a steroids question. I don't know if that reduced any of the home runs in your mind.
Yeah, it did. Only because, you know, Josh came up with dingers. I don't know, came up with the most exciting or the most memorable. And like now, when you think about it, you know, no one has come up to me and said, "Hey, remember Mark McGwire's home run? Or do you remember Barry Bonds' home run?" You know, people don't seem to do that. Whereas, you know, even someone today goes, "Remember when Daniel Nava hit a grand slam on his first pitch?" I mean, you know, he's not in the book, but he could have been in the book. But so yeah, it did, you know, because it's not. I'm not judging him. I'm just saying, you know, like what people remember. I mean, Josh wrote the one about, and people do remember this, is the home run the ball that went off Jose Canseco's head and went into the, and was called a home run. You know, because people, you know, they'll play it on ESPN and those blooper reels, so you know, it's memorable. Nancy.
Out of all baseball games that have been played since the beginning of time, and all the home runs that have been hit, how did you come up with 100?
Well,
What was your criteria?
criteria was reading, you know, let's say, or knowing some of this and then examining others, and obviously things ended up weighted more if they were in playoff or World Series situations. or if they were unusual, or so it was a nice salad or stew, kind of coming up with. And again, people will disagree, and I assume they will. It's like why you rated this over that, and some of it was subjective, but I don't know how many things we watched and read, and I the bibliography, and actually it was just kind of fun, like baseball, like at the end of the day it's but don't worry, there's plenty of Yankees in there,
As long as Jeter's in there, we're good.
Hey, he is. I'm sure he's very happy to hear that from me too. That's well, thank you all for. Oh, Don.
Those kids are 7-Eleven. They thought you were a Red Sox player?
Yeah.
Which member of the Red Sox do they think you were?
One of the smaller members. Let's put this way, and I wore number 6 because I was never worthy enough to wear number 7, like the Mickey Mantle. And I did it, and again, you'd be a baseball fan, and there appears to be many here, that, I wore number 6 in honor of Roy White, because he was like my second favorite Yankee as a kid. He was a small guy. He was a Catholic also, which, the things that, it's like Bill Freehand, I don't know if you remember, he used to bless himself before he went to bed, and that's when you're a young kid, hey. So anyways, I don't know. See, I could fit the Pedroia mold. I've always wanted to stand next to him because I think I'm taller than him. I think I'm taller than Pedroia.
I was thinking Bill Lee. It's a little resemblance.
What's that?
Bill Lee.
Oh, Bill Lee. How I said is that, I was very lucky, to do the baseball. And so I got to meet all those people, I saw most of them naked, actually, because, that after the game, I'd be showering, and, I spent the first probably 15 years of my career, interviewing naked people, and Bill Lee, one time I went up to him, and not that a lot of you know, I liked Elvis Costello, and I said, you ever see Elvis Costello? And he goes, nah. We work the same nights. Or we have the same schedule or something, and I go, it's a great, and, he was a very good guy. Good guy. But thank you for that question. What Red Sox? I should think about who they probably thought I was. I started signing baseball autographs in there, though. No, I'm kidding. But thank you very much. Thank you for coming.